everybody, welcome. Tammy from Homesteading in the City with Tammy. Today's video, we're out in the garden again. It's kind of a nice day, a little cool, but you know, the sun's shining, so why not get outside and try to do some things. But I wanted to talk to you guys about using the space that you have available to grow vegetables. If you have a porch or a deck or something like that, you're able to grow a lot of plants in pots on your deck, and they do really well. Let me turn you around and I'll show you some of the stuff that I have. So one of the things that I've always grown on my back deck is I've taken these big pots and I've put in peppers in them. Peppers do really well in a container, especially like a hot pepper. But even regular peppers will do pretty good, and you'll get a decent sized pepper. Your cherry tomatoes do really well in a pot on the deck, so you can have some fresh tomatoes. The other thing that does really well in a pot is lettuce. Lettuce will grow in like the pots that you get for deck pots that they put on around your deck to put flowers in. They do very well in something like that. Your cucumbers will do really good in a pot, and you can put a cage in the pot and allow them to grow vertical, and that way you will have cucumbers. And same with green beans, you can put them in a pot around and let them grow vertical. And for years I've put my green beans along my chain link fence over here, and they fill my chain link fence, and I have a ton of green beans every year. So I plant them there every year, and I get a ton of green beans. I mean, I probably can 40 to 50 pints of green beans every year. And that's just a 10-foot piece of chain link fence. And now that's a lot of chain link fence, and a lot of people don't have space to do something like that. But you can get quite a few green beans in a pot. You know, and here I have my blueberries in a pot, and blueberries are another thing that will grow pretty good in a pot. They have these new vertical planters that they have that you can put strawberries in, and it's a tower, and they will let the strawberries go down and fertilize and go into the next pot below it. So strawberries are another thing that will grow in a vertical pot on a deck or in the side yard or someplace like that. Herbs are another one that will grow in pots, and you can grow these in the house on your windowsill. Herbs are one of those other things that you can grow inside your house in pots on your patio and stuff like that. So herbs are something, and you can just when they get tall enough before they flower, they'll get about this tall. And then you can just take your scissors and cut them off. And then what I do, I'll just stick them on a cookie sheet and put them on a low temp of like 150 in my oven, and just let them dry in my oven, because I don't have a dehydrator to dry them. And I've dried them in the sun, but you've got to they've got to be out there for 2 or 3 days in direct sun. And it's about 3 hours in the oven on a low 150 temp in the oven, sometimes a little less depending on how thick you have your tray of herbs. And then I just crumble them up and stick them in a mason jar and put a lid on them, and then I have fresh herbs. A lot of people will try to freeze them, and I've never had really good luck with freezing my herbs. I have better luck with drying my herbs. So I just usually give them a haircut. And you don't want to, this is my haircut from the winter that I did last year. So, and they're starting to come back pretty good, which, we'll get, and they'll take off. And before they go to seed, before they flower, you want to cut it all down and give them a good haircut. And you can get sometimes 2 to 3 cuttings off of your herbs a season, if you have, if they're able to start growing. Like this one's growing really good, and it's got a lot of green on it, and it'll start taking off here in the next couple of weeks. And probably by the end of May, I should be able to give it a haircut, and then again, in August, and then possibly give it another haircut in October before it gets too cold. So that's a lot of oregano that I can get to save for making my spaghetti sauce. And doing my diced tomatoes and stuff like that I can. So that's one of the things I really enjoy, is doing some herbs. And I have pots on my deck that I will put like parsley in and thyme. A lot of those don't come back every year. The oregano definitely comes back every year. One of these oregano plants I think I've had for like 7 years. I just keep transplanting it and moving it somewhere else, and it just keeps coming back. It's almost one of those things that I can't kill, which is okay. That way I paid $4 for it 6-8 years ago, and I haven't had to pay for it again. So one of the things I'm going to try this year with these pots that I've put on my back porch with peppers in them every year, I'm going to fill these with dirt, and I'm going to try to put carrots and beets and radishes in them. Radishes are something that we use a lot of and we eat a lot of, but they end up going to seed way too fast. Radishes are a really cold weather plant. They like it cool out. They like not to have a lot of sun on them. They like to grow slow, and the slower they can grow, the bigger the fruit they'll get. If they get too much sun, the tops will grow really fast and there will be no fruit. So it's kind of like that they bolt, is what they call them, when they grow really big and then you have no fruit underneath it. So you pull them out, you have this whole bed of beautiful radish tops, but there's no fruit under there. The other thing with your radishes, there again, they don't go real deep into the ground with soil, so I'm hoping they're going to do really good in a pot. Radishes only go maybe 2 inches into the ground with just your regular circle radishes. So I'm thinking if I start putting them in these pots and I put them around, they've got plenty of places to grow and to get big if they need to, but they don't usually use that much. And then this way, with them being in a pot, I can start them here, which they get the late afternoon sun, and they get sun almost all day over here. But right now, when it's cool temperatures, they might do okay here. But come summer, I can put them over here on this side when they get the morning sun, and then they're shaded come afternoon, after 12 o'clock. This is all shaded over here. This is where I usually put my lettuce. And I might actually put lettuce in a pot this year. I have a couple extra pots that I might end up putting some lettuce in some pots instead of putting it in the ground. We'll see. I have to decide what I'm going to do here when I get my lettuce going. I put it in the greenhouse and I'm not sure it's doing much of anything in there. So we'll have to see. But I'm going to get these pots planted with some carrots and beets and radishes today. So that's my project. Hopefully we'll get it planted, and hopefully in a couple of days I'll have some sprouts and I can show you. Well, now that I have them planted, I'll give them a good drink with the fish emulsion fertilizer, and we will hope for the best, that we will have some growth in a short amount of time. Usually radishes a couple of weeks, and I have sprouts on radishes when I do them this early in the year, because it's so cold it takes them a little bit of time to germinate. But hopefully we will be able to get them going. Also, another thing I wanted to talk about with my pots, at the end of the season when I'm done with my dirt, I save the dirt. I get out all of the roots that I can, and I save as much of the dirt as I can so I don't have to rebuy as much each year, which keeps down the amount of cost that I have to do. And I will just get a couple of pots, a couple of bags of like a Miracle-Gro potting soil or an organic potting soil, something that I can mix with this dirt every year and give it some life again. But this keeps me from throwing away this dirt at the end of the season. Yeah, it might have used all of its life up, but it also will allow me to reuse the dirt in the bottom of my pots and put new dirt on top of them so that the plants will get the nutrients from the fresh dirt on top. One of the other things I do is I have a friend that gives me kitty litter buckets, and I will put peppers in kitty litter buckets and put them around the side of the yard so that they're in the yard in different places. And you could paint them, take the tag off them. They would just be yellow. They wouldn't know that they were kitty litter buckets, but they have a handle on them and you can move them around the yard. So that's another good way to be able to use buckets that are relatively cheap. People that have cats, a lot of times they don't use the buckets and they throw them in the recyclable and get rid of them. You know, you find a couple of people that have cats, or maybe to a shelter where they have all the buckets and they don't do anything with them at the end. You might be able to stop into the shelter and ask them if they will save you some of their kitty litter buckets so that you can use them for putting plants in around the yard for your garden. And a lot of times they're free. They just want to get rid of them. You know, they're a good bucket. You just have to drill a hole in the bottom of them, or a couple of holes in the bottom of them, so that the water can drain out. The only thing you have to remember when you're planting in a bucket, you have to remember that they dry out faster than the ground. So you have to remember to water them. Sometimes, depending on how hot it is where they're at, they might need watered twice a day. But you just check the soil to make sure that it's moist, and if it's moist, you don't water them. If it's not, then you can water them. Peppers can go a little bit longer without being watered. They kind of like to have a drier soil, where your tomatoes, they will crack if they're not getting enough water and they dry out. And if you let them get like parched, it takes too long for them to revive, to grow again. So you're just shocking them every time that you're not giving them enough water. So if you're going to grow a tomato, you're going to definitely want to make sure that you're giving it enough water to allow it to produce, but don't overwater it so that it gets soggy and it just doesn't have a chance to drink all the water. You're just going to have to stick your finger in and test the soil on a regular basis just to make sure you know what you're doing before you water it. Just a recap of some of the things that you can do for your garden. You're able to plant a lot of stuff in a garden in pots and put it on your porch and save some money that way. Even if you only get, lettuce for a couple of weeks or a couple of months, it's better than not having any lettuce. And once you start growing your own vegetables, you'll realize how much more flavorful they are. And you're going to want to grow more, and you're going to want to try new things. And that's just something that you have to try to, you have to experiment with. With me, I'm experimenting in these buckets this year to see if I can grow carrots and radishes and beets in buckets instead of in the ground. If it doesn't work, I had a really good year last year with my carrots and my beets. I don't need them this year. So it's not going to hurt me to try something new. Every year I will rotate vegetables that I need. There's years when I will plant half my garden with sweet potatoes and get a bunch of sweet potatoes in can. I always put my peppers and my onions, or my peppers and my tomatoes in the garden. And, I always have my lettuce and different things. But, lettuce is one of those things that if it gets too warm too fast, again, it will bolt, and you have lettuce for, it all comes at one time, and you have a ton of lettuce, and only 2 people eating it. It's a lot of lettuce. So you just have to try to plant things that you're going to use. We know what we don't eat, so I don't plant certain things. One year I tried planting squash and pumpkins and zucchini, and it overtook my garden, and I had no room for everything else. And I had so much zucchini one year that I ended up using zucchini to make relish with, because zucchini is one of those vegetables that really doesn't have any flavor. And whatever flavor you put in it, it'll take. And nobody knew that my relish that year was a zucchini relish instead of using cucumbers, because my zucchini plants overtook my garden, and my my cucumber plants didn't do anything. So that just, certain things you just read. And there's a couple of books, and I will link them in down here also, so that you guys can see of the canning books that I use, that I swear by these books. I have pages marked that I use constantly to make certain things, and they're wonderful canning books, and that'll be another video. We'll talk about preserving their food and how to do that. But that's just, you know, a couple of things. So, you know, you can grow a lot of vegetables in pots, and you try, you experiment, you learn what you can grow and what grows well in your environment that you have. You know, and if you're going to plant vegetables in your flower bed, which you can absolutely do between your flowers and stuff like that, you just have to remember that if you are fertilizing your flowers with Bloom Burst Miracle Grow, you can't eat those vegetables. So you need to remember that if you're going to plant vegetables inside that flower bed, you need to use an organic fertilizer so that you can eat it. So you don't want to take all the time to put that down, and then you can't eat the fruit that you preserved or that you grew. You know, the whole point of growing your own vegetables is to be able to enjoy the flavor of your own vegetables. So you just have to do that kind of stuff. I mean, there's so much stuff that you can grow in pots, you know, and like little pots, you know, like your cucumbers and your green beans and your lettuce, they only get, maybe their roots aren't more than 1.5 inches long. So you don't need a real deep pot. I mean, you don't need a pot I'm using here for your green beans. You would need it for your green beans just because of the weight of the green bean, unless of the cage that you put in it. But if you're able to do a long row of green beans in like a deck box that you have that goes on your deck, and you can put it along the base of your deck on the porch, and you can put a trellis that you can lean the trellis or zip tie the trellis to something. It allows the beans to grow up the trellis like they do on my chain link fence. That gives you the space. Oh, I hope you guys can hear me. It's getting really windy out. I might have to stop filming here in a little bit. But that gives you the space that you can grow some green beans on the side of your deck. You know, lettuce can get put up in the deck boxes. Yeah, you can put marigolds or flowers or something in with your lettuce, and just trim your lettuce. When you want a salad, go out and cut a few things. Cucumbers are the same thing. They can grow on the ground, on the floor of your deck, in those little pots. And again, the roots aren't very big. They don't go very deep. The only reason I'm doing this for carrots and beets and radishes, and even them, the carrots get really long, but your beets and your radishes don't go very deep into the ground. Beets usually only go 2, maybe 3 inches. I wouldn't need a pot this size to do that. I just have this. It's free, and I'm just trying it this year to see if it works. So this is an experiment that I'm doing, and hopefully it works, and we'll let you know. I'm hoping I'll be able to get some sprouts here in the next couple of weeks and show what we have, but I'm really hoping it works well for my radishes, because we love radishes, and once it gets warm, we can no longer do radishes because we just can't grow them. They bolt too fast, and we really like to have radishes on our salads or just eat them fresh. And this way, with a pot, I'll be able to move it to a shadier spot in my yard, and maybe I'll be able to grow more radishes longer through the season. Well, everybody, thanks for watching. If you like this video, please subscribe, and I will catch you on the next one. Wow, it's getting windy out here. Hope you're able to hear all that. Have a good day.